It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Tuesday, July 25th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have a Provi in the media, the practical word study, and of course, commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. Woo! All right, everyone. How are you doing? Yes, we had a wonderful Monday. Hope you guys started off this week really well. We're into the meat of the week. If you haven't yet, go ahead, leave a like and comment. Build this community. I just love the comments and all the things going around right now. Lots of positivity and realizations that are going on too. Super happy for everyone joining us here every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up and support each other each and every day. This week's Sunday message title, God's beloved body has become the body of the people of the world, and that is why they were judged. To whom does your body belong? And that's a great question. We are going to talk about that a little bit more in the practical word study, so we'll get into that a little bit later in the second section. But yeah, today, day 2, 70-day prayer condition, day 2 has begun. Hope you guys are doing well with this already. Prayer right now is the ultimate and greatest thing we can do. Yes, the focus is now way more on the pre-dawn. I'll have even a shorter prayer at night so I can just get some more rest. I'm trying to find like tips and tricks on how to sleep more quickly. And there's some doctors like giving like these interesting different ways to trick your body into falling asleep and having a more deeper sleep. And it actually worked. It takes a minute and 20 seconds for this to work. It's pretty crazy. Like I on my left hand, on the pinky side of your hand, if you go down, you're gonna find like you run your finger down your palm on the right side of your hand, and then you're gonna feel this bone, and then right next to the bone there's a divot. And what you do with your thumb is you press it down constantly for like 20 seconds, and then you hold it for a minute, and then you just kind of go to sleep. And I thought it wasn't going to work. I just tried it, and then I laid down, and I was out. I think I was out within like 2-3 minutes. Because I don't even remember. Like, usually I have these problems with, like, I'm just staring at the ceiling, and sometimes I have insomnia. And I was telling you guys because, especially in Vancouver, the sun goes down after 9 p.m., so it takes your body a while for the melatonin to kick in. And I sleep a little bit later, but I slept pretty quickly after that, so I'm gonna try to use that trick every night, the most that I can. But I'm excited. I had a good prayer this morning. Of course, I know I can do better, but my focus is gonna be way more on that pre-dawn too. Lots of people commenting about the Sunday message, which I'm really, really happy to hear. Yes, some people were saying they were crying during the message too. I didn't really get to that point because I'm not a girl. I'm just kidding, kind of, maybe not. So it's like this, it was such a deep, shimjung-filled sermon. If you guys heard yesterday, I did the word study on that too. It was like scary, but yet it was deeply filled with that han, that Korean word for the word grief or grievance. So you can feel God's like that han, like that deep han that he has. And yet from that, it gets a little bit scary because it's a time of judgment and stuff too. So I was just like, wow, I really felt from listening to that message how much we only see such a small part of the big picture. Like, we don't see the whole thing, what's going on. Because remember, like, I was talking about this yesterday too. In March, for like a couple of weeks, we were all waiting, like wondering, is Sunsim going to say something about, like those first weeks after, AJ did that leaders meeting and such, we were all kind of in shock and we're like, Sunsim, you got to say something because, a lot of people are confused and struggling. Like, Sunsim, what are you saying? Kind of thing, right? Like, we were all waiting for it. Are you going to say something or not? And it was interesting because at times it almost felt he was defending her. He was like, hey, don't say bad things about her. Don't, and we're like, oh, what's going on? And it kind of left everyone even more confused. And then I realized we're only confused because we're only looking for a specific outcome. Like, that he'll just say, she's wrong and she's a bad person and we should all not listen to, like, we're kind of waiting for that. Like, we're not even getting that kind of clear picture until now. Like, okay, now we know what's going on, right? And I was thinking about why I was kind of like that. Like, well, why won't you give like some type of answer, some clarification so we know what we should be doing? And I was thinking to myself, I'm not sure about you guys, but I'm thinking to myself is like, I'm thinking only about a solution. It's like a machine. Like it's either yes or no. It's 1 or 0, right? And I just wanted that solution and that answer so badly that I forgot about the human aspect. Like the human aspect, the emotion, the hurt, the pain, and what Sunseem talks about this week is betrayal of love. And I thought to myself, it would be so, I thought to myself, it'd just be, kind of like, hey, hello, people are being affected, so just, throw AJ under the bus or whatever it is and just get, let's move forward. And the more and more I listen to the messages lately, over the last 3 weeks, you kind of, or maybe even after over the last month, I realize like how much he really prayed and waited for her to come back. Like just, they had a real, it was a real deep relationship they had. And, Sunseem really loved her. And I'm when you think about it now, I was like, I sometimes think that we're wanting the solution or the answer so bad that we just want them to, just get it over with, Sunseem. Just do that. Why are you doing this? And I think a lot of times people do misunderstand Sunseem too. Like for instance, I've heard people, or like even myself, probably in the past I'd be like, why don't you just replace the leader? And after I became a leader, it was something that was quite shocking to me. Like, because I was like, oh, now I'm the leader. But if someone says that, it shocks me a bit because I'm like, but that's my livelihood. And what else would I have if I wasn't a leader or I wasn't in leadership? And even if someone is no good at leading, at that moment, if we just, replace them, where are they going to go next? Like, these are more than we need a new leader, let's just replace him. They need to be taken care of. They need to be trained to become better so that they can continue to be a leader in the future. And I find that sometimes we can be quite cutthroat and not thinking about the emotional and human aspect of it. And like, I'll give you another example. If I've actually heard a situation where there's a family's daughter that was experimenting with like being a lesbian. And the parents are really upset, emotional. And, they're like, what do we say? We got, they were upset and angry. They wanted to rebuke or reprimand. And some of, they're like, oh, maybe we should move away or whatever it was. But as much as, of course, we really, really want to fix the situation. We want the situation to be better. But if it was a machine, it'd be very easy to go in and just fix the nuts and bolts or just that piece of the machine. And then, boom, it works right away. But we kind of have to realize we're not machines. Like, we're human beings. And we need to take care of each other and love each other above all other things. Just like that other example was I told you there's a blessed family where the wife is now like believing all the rumors and the slanders and stuff like that too. But, I think when we really realize how much Sunseem loves these people and how much he's hurt by them and how much he feels betrayed by them, that is not something you could just sit there and throw people away, that you've had those experiences and that life together kind of thing, right? And I think some things need to take time, and the greatest thing we can do is to love them. And I think Sunseem shows the best example for that. It is definitely the best example where Sunseem shows that patience and that absolute love that he's not willing, it's like that Bible verse that we heard 2 weeks ago is like, if the shepherd, if it loses one sheep, then he'll leave the 99 behind to find that one sheep. And that's the mindset that I think that we still lack in a lot. And I was looking at the situation like, yeah, it's so true. Sometimes we're looking at things like it's a machine more than we're dealing with real human beings with real emotions and real problems. And I was thinking, yeah, that's one of the mindsets that I do need to change. And like I try my best, but sometimes we can't help it. We have that like reaction to something that we hear or see, or like, come on, like why doesn't it work? And I think it's something that we have to start considering again. How are our thoughts? What is the path of our thoughts, and which way are we going? So that was something that was interesting that I was thinking about too. But it all came down to that deep Sunday message. We're getting a lot of answers, and those answers are giving us a reason, right? The answers we're getting now helps us to realize how emotional and how sad and how much grief Sunseam has in the situation. And I think I talked about this maybe 3 weeks ago when the message was talking about Sunseam going to the spiritual world to see their spiritual clothes and what their life is really like. And I looked at that like, wow, like he's really still praying for them and checking on them also. Where myself is, I was so upset and I was like, what? And I was just like, oh. And I wasn't like praying or being like how Sunseam is loving these people too. So yeah, that was something that made me think a little bit more deeply. But this week's message about the judgment of conscience, that we're in the time of Noah right now, and showing us the difference between judgment and the will. The funny thing is, one of the best ways to remember the message is to kind of use the message in like jokes. Like me and the guys were hanging out yesterday after service, and we're just constantly joking around about judgment and coincidence. So whenever something happens, we all look at each other and we're like, coincidence? Or is it excessive? Which means it's the will. God did it, right? So, when you start like constantly bringing the word into everyday life, it's funny, but it helps you to remember it. Like we were playing like a card game, and this one guy kept losing. Like they would never win. And we're like, we're not going to eat until you win. And, finally he wins. And then we look at each other like, coincidence? Or is it God's will? And then we're all laughing because it's like, no, it's excessive. It's excessive that you won because there's no way you'd win ever. So this is definitely God's will for us to go eat. So like, we spend that. I think it's something that's very, very fun. I think it's something that guys do. I'm not sure if girls do this, but guys totally just joke around a lot. But I want to talk about, since we're living in the time of judgment right now, I start to look up the news again, like what's going on around the world. And there's a couple things I'm looking at, and they are excessive. Like these are like, that this is the judgment going on. Like in Europe, there's the heat wave, and you guys over there in Europe, you guys are probably feeling it the most. But this European heat wave is so bad. There's like red alerts going on all over Europe, which means extreme heat, right? And it's mainly in Italy. And the temperatures are going to peak on Wednesday, and 23 cities on high alert in Italy alone. And this red alert means that the heat poses a threat to everyone, not just vulnerable groups, right? So like there was a heat wave over here in Vancouver, and the red alert was for people who are like senior citizens. But it's so hot. This heat wave is so bad right now in Italy. It's red alert, meaning everyone is vulnerable to it. Right? And of course, it's not helping out because there's like wildfires raging across the continent, including in Greece and the Swiss Alps. Millions of people in the northern hemisphere are being affected by scorching temperatures, and it's pretty crazy. Like, I think the heat is forecast to last through Wednesday across most of southern Europe, and the temperatures are going to be over 40 degrees Celsius, which is over 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and some parts in Italy are going to hit 46 or 47 degrees. So, when I looked at it, I was like, wow, this is really something that we have to look at and see that this is happening around. This is the time of Noah, right? In the Greek island, there's a Greek island called Corfu where the wildfires are happening. This place, I think, like 19,000 people were evacuated from an island. It's called Rhodes. That's been hit by fires. People are forced to flee their hotels as the flames continue to spread from the center of the Greek island. And they've been grappling with this searing heat in Greece also, with the temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius across the country. And now these wildfires have been ablaze for over a week in some areas now, right? So I was looking at that like, this heat wave, this is not normal, right? 46, 47 is not normal. In China, another thing happened there is 11 people died. Most of them are supposed to be children. There's a gymnasium. The roof collapses. At least 11 people are known to have died. School gymnasium collapses under heavy rain in northeast China. So I'm looking at that like, wow, that's pretty crazy. In Canada too, in Nova Scotia, 4 are missing after extreme rainfall hits Canada. All right, so Nova Scotia is like in the Maritime provinces, like way east coast, right? And they said that this is the heaviest rain in 50 years, and it's triggered floods. Thousands left their homes without electricity. So guess how much rain it is? It is 3 months of rain in 24 hours. That's how crazy it is. And you know what the headline is? Nova Scotia hit by hit by heavy rains of biblical proportions, right? So I'm just kind of like, whoa, okay, that's in itself too. In Saskatchewan, another part of Canada also, July storms, there's hail the size of golf balls coming down in Saskatchewan. And the storm also prompted tornado warnings. And Saskatchewan's like in the middle of Canada. So I was looking at all this stuff and I was like, man, like I'm not even looking very far into it. And you just look at the headlines and you see that this is like a time of judgment that's happening right now. And since we talked especially about natural disasters, not the normal things. Like the normal rain is you'll get that amount of rain in 3 months, but you get 3 months of rain in 24 hours. And that is excessive. And you're like, okay, something is going on here too. So I'm looking at this. And I think we really have to stay tuned and see what is going on. If you guys see anything else or your area or region has something that's very, like it's judgment of God kind of thing, write in the comments below. I'd love to hear it and I can report on that too. But this is something where it started, right? This, even when the message began, remember the message is when it's reported, but it doesn't mean that it starts from Sunday, but it's already been happening from weeks before where God is already judging. And then the man of mission will bring it in the message itself. So yeah, it's intense. And I'm just like, wow, I don't know. Like, repentance is a big thing for me, guys. I don't want to be thrown off the ark. I want to be in there and I want to make sure that I'm protected and that I really, one of the good things is, something in the past said, the ark is the word, right? You're protected by the word. So we get the word, we listen to it, we put it into action, and it's like us going into the ark. So I hope that whatever it is, look deep, reflect. There's a lot of sins that we still have that we may not have repented for. But when the time of judgment comes, anyone who has a sin is going to be judged at that time. So I hope it's something that all of us will really be able to do. I had this cool comment yesterday. Because remember I talked about Sunseam giving Korean names, and when I see a Westerner or someone non-Asian or non-Korean using it, it's kind of weird and awkward, right? But this person had a really good comment about it too, just saying, hey, why don't they just say that they're studying Korean and their Korean teacher gave them that name? And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And that does. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense for a regular person. Right? That makes sense for a regular person. However, there's one thing that I was thinking about is, the thing that's kind of difficult is most of the people who have their names changed are leaders. And they stand at the pulpit. And I would say it's kind of weird to use a name from a Korean teacher as your professional name, meaning like the real name that you use. Like, imagine a pastor at the front saying, hello, everyone. My name is now Ju Kimchi. So you can all call me Pastor Kimchi from now on, right? So it'd be kind of weird if you were using that as your professional name at the very, very front when there's newcomers and stuff like that too. So that's all I'm trying to say is it is kind of weird. I'm not going to say it's a big deal, but I always found it quite weird. And I was just thankful that I never had to deal with that because I had a Korean and an English name. Now, I'm not here to brag that I got both an English and Korean name, but it is it was just something that I was thinking about because I told you guys the experience I had over the weekend. So I talked yesterday about online church and doing things online. And, a lot of people were really positive about it. It's, something that we can do to help each of the churches around the world that need like an English online church. But something that's quite interesting, like I know an online church needs time to develop and you need a team to work on it together. And I understand that point. But I do think that we can start something a little bit easier. What do I mean? I'm thinking about something easier in the beginning, which means it's not going to be a public channel or a public website, but a website that you have to sign into, right? You have to register for, that helps churches out with something I think that many churches, especially the small ones, really need, which is help in lecturing. And I think this is the area for myself that I specialize in the most. And I think this would be a great project to work on instead of, a project where you can build a website where people can sign up for access to lectures on video that people can use to help teach their newcomers, where they don't need to focus so much on newcomers, but they can let the videos do the lecturing and they can focus on either managing or basically going out and finding people and helping them to listen to these lectures and stuff like that too. So I was thinking like, that would be a kind of cool idea. And I think a lot of churches would want something like that because a lot of churches do lack in manpower and a lot of churches do lack in lecturing, right? So I was thinking, maybe that would be a good project. And that made me think about something that I want everyone else to think about. Like, when you look at me, and I'm just using myself as an example because I am very proactive, like super proactive, always looking for new things. Like, like I said, the coloring books that I have, or using AI, or just trying out different things constantly. I'm like the first podcast in Providence, the first one using Patreon, right, to get financial support and stuff. And like I'm thinking about all these other different things, and I'm constantly looking for things to do. And I think there's something that people have to think about is, instead of waiting or trying to mold yourself into a mission that's already out there, what about making your own mission, right? So like for me, the area that I specialize in the most is like lecturing, teaching, education, that kind of stuff. And for me, I was thinking to myself, instead of waiting for a mission that may not even fit me or I have to fit into, isn't it better just for me to make a mission that I can do and really work on? Like, I think it's something that people should think about also. Sometimes some people want to run for this history, but sometimes the missions that are available or that are out there may not fit you that well. And then you might think to yourself as, I was never meant to do this. However, I do think we need to think outside the box sometimes. And if we think outside the box and the niche that you have, knowing it's kind of like business. When I'm studying business and the things that I want to do, like even with coloring books, you look for niches. You look for these niches that not a lot of people are in, but people are still interested in it, right? But it's a very small niche. Not a lot of people are in that niche and you can make a lot of money from it, right? And I think in the same way, when it comes to our missions, the things that we want to do for this history, sometimes I don't think it's about us having to become all head leaders, because I don't think we all need to be head leaders. I don't think we all need to be assistant leaders or department leaders, but I do think we can find that place, that little niche that we fit into well, and we can make a niche for ourselves that are helping our churches, right? Like, that's why I'm thinking like, yeah, you know what? This podcast is going to help people. This is going to help people, and this is something that's useful. And like, even in my mind is, people will only support or pay for things that they really find beneficial. It's just like podcasts. Like, I can go and do a regular podcast in the world, but I have a niche, and the niche is Providence members. The only issue with Providence members is English-speaking Providence members, there are very few, right? So in this world of like, say, 35,000, 40,000 Providence members, you're going to have like 1,000 people that speak English, maybe 1,200, right? So if my niche is English-speaking Providence members for this podcast, it's 1,200 people. And of those 1,200, I'm thinking not everyone's into podcasts. I might get 10%, maybe 10 to 20%. And that's kind of what I have right now, right? Right now, there's about 1,000, 1,200 people in Providence that are speaking English. And I have about anywhere from like 200 to 300 people listening to this every single day, right? Of 1,200, which is what? It's like, like 15%. 50, if it's 200, it's going to be like of 1,200. That's 10% of 1,200 is 120. So yeah, I'm having anywhere over like a little bit over 15%. It's a small niche, right? And interesting thing is, I'll look at this like, oh, this works out. And then people who really, really enjoy it, they're going to support this endeavor and this project. But I was thinking like, if it comes to like lecturing, and lecturing is the thing that I'm more expertise in, I can use that expertise and work on a team that builds a lecturing website where churches can use to teach their newcomers, especially churches that may not have lecturers on hand, right? And it'll make it a lot easier. And, from there, it's very, very easy to come up with ideas like making the video interactive, make it come with a printable worksheet that the person can use together. Like, there's so many different ideas you can bring in where it's not going to just be a lecture and then they listen after an hour and then the person who's watching the lecture with the newcomer doesn't know what to say, but there'll be like a worksheet for the person who is the evangelist to ask certain questions, to write it down and have a discussion time with them after, or, something like that along that line. So even for me, I was like, yeah, we could find a way to find that niche that works best for you so you can help in running your church. And you don't even have to do it full time, right? You may not have to do it full time. But I do think it's something that we should all be thinking about in some way is, I may not fit as a department leader, but I can do something in there. I can do something in there that fits my niche, right? What if someone's a great cook and they have or a baker? Imagine they're a baker and then every Thursday night you have a gathering at your house and you bake for people and it's a time for them to have say small group Bible study or something along that line where it's just members, or members can bring some newcomers and can have a fun. There's so many things that you can do as something you contribute into this history. So that is something I think that people can think about and can work on also. And tell me what your ideas are too. What are the things that you think the people out there that don't really fit into one of the missions, but they do have a talent that they can help with, right? Like Kat, I know she's telling me she has blogs and stuff, right? And that's awesome because if you have a blog, later when we have, a website, like an online church, we're going to need someone to do journalistic stuff, people writing blogs on that website too, and we're going to need as much help as possible, right? So I just see that there's a ton of potential out there of people who can run this history, but just not in the traditional way, but you can help, all right? So yeah, those are kind of some of the thoughts I've been having lately, but let's get into our first break of the day.
Takes more than one life. You gotta work to match in quality and content. You might find out the one is only doesn't work the same. Don't be phony. Without your team, it's on me for life. Stand up, we gotta scream the name. I hear them calling radio waves. It's no telepathy. We talking through the sound of one heart. Speed out the Trinity. My counterparts love from the start. The blood flow in my veins. It's time to top the charts. The power starts. I'll always call his name. After 100 years, after 1,000 years, I'll be here for eternity. I'm stuck on you, Lord. 1+1. Look at us, we're a pair, the head and body here. So easy, just like 1+1. Faster and stronger, better when we're together. The lock, the key, the pen, the ink, 1,000 square high level. The inside and the out, oh yeah, he raised me. We live together now, some might say that I'm crazy. Come find your counterpart and fall in love too, we'll sing. Look at the harmony, the beauty in this history. We match in every way, don't hesitate to follow me. Come find your counterpart and fall in love too, we'll sing. Love is one and it doesn't change. Passionate ones at the top of the chain. our love needs two to be one. Just like the earth and the moon, we pair up and it's so beautiful to be in love with you. The inside and the out, oh yeah, he raised me. We live together now, some might say that I'm crazy. Come find your counterpart and fall in love too, we'll sing. Look at the harmony, the beauty in this history. We match in every way, don't hesitate to follow me. Come find your counterpart and fall in love too, we'll sing.
All right, so let's get into our word study for today. And every Tuesday we have the practical word study. And I had there's just too many thoughts in this week's message. And, I was going through not kind of like a mental exercise or looking or reflecting back on this week's message and what I can do to make it more practical, or what are the things that I need to focus on, whether it's like a daily, what else to write in a journal or something along that line. And the big thing, especially with this week's message, it's about do not become the body of the world. You were God's beloved body, but then you turned and become the body of the world. And basically that means that you were listening to the people of the world and you started doing what the people of the world wanted, and that's why you became the body of the world, right? So, when you think about this message, it almost doesn't, it's really scary. It's like, oh my gosh. And we know the situation, the spiritual Oppenheimer that happened. We're like, oh my gosh, what happened? And, we think only about the really extreme cases, like people who are slandering, accusing, and being on their side, or going against the man of mission, something along that line. We're thinking very, very extreme cases. But we also know that one of the first charts that Sunstein was ever given was the chart of magnification and miniaturization. And we do need to think about ourselves as, what does it mean to become the body of the world in a miniaturized sense in our life, right? Like, there are times in our life where we listen to God and we become the body of the Lord, and there are times we don't really listen to God, or we go against God, or we complain, or we have these negative feelings and we become the body of the world, right? So I think that's something that we do need to think about and reflect in our own life, because this week's message, we realize how much it hurts God, because the word used in this week's message is betrayal, right? The betrayal of becoming the body of the world. Like, that's such a strong and heavy word, betrayal. Betrayal is someone you trusted and loved and they stab you in the back. It is your wife or husband cheating on you. It's the worst thing, is because it's between people who love and trust each other. And to do it there, that is betrayal. If it's someone you don't trust and love, it can no longer be called betrayal anymore, because you have nothing, you have no feelings, you have no connection to that person, right? And we look at that as like, wow, the word betrayal was used. And I think the first mental exercise I had is thinking to myself is, betrayal, like that is not a small thing. To betray someone is not a small thing, because you can only betray someone that you trusted and you loved, right? And it's a mutual thing. You trusted them and they trusted you. And that was like, that was something known between the two of you. Which means, I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, to betray someone that you love and trust, and they love and trust you, man, how could you actually betray when you love and trust someone, they love and trust you? And I thought to myself, well, then the person who actually did the betraying, which means the person who betrayed must have once loved and trusted this person too, but they lost that love and trust, because they'll betray when they feel betrayed, right? So it means that there's probably something that happened in their life that would tell them that they shouldn't trust the other person anymore. Or in this case, oh, I can't trust God anymore. Oh, I can't believe in God anymore because of this. Like, there's something that happened that made them turn their hearts around and say, nope, not anymore, God. You fool. It's you. You're the one that went against me. It's like, I was thinking to myself as, yeah, like they would have to go through something where they felt really betrayed, even if it's just from their own perception. And I was thinking to myself is, well, when do these types of situations happen where you feel betrayed? And of course, it has to be a situation that's very strong. It's a strong emotional feeling, something that you're very attached to. And then God doesn't do something for you. It would be something like, yeah, something like God didn't do for you. God didn't protect you. You go through some type of experience that you feel that God could have done something, but they didn't. And then you feel betrayed, right? Whether it's God or the man of mission. And I think, this is how betrayal works. It's not sudden. You need to feel betrayed first before you betray someone else. Even if it's just their own perception, or they may not know the full situation. We've seen those in movies before where someone doesn't know the full situation and then they feel like, oh, this person went against me, but later they find the real situation, then they feel bad, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know, kind of thing, right? But it looks like it's one of these types of things where it's such a big thing. Look at the people that have left. And you look at the people that have left, you can't just betray the way that they did it. It's not something that's just a normal, natural thing. There's something that happened before that makes them feel that way first. So we have to look at our own lives too, because we don't want to be in that position either. And I thought to myself, I need to begin and reflect on myself, right? When were the times in my life when I felt I was betrayed by God? Those feelings where, God, you could have helped me. God, you weren't there for me. Or why did you let me go through such a thing? And when you get to that point, when you're thinking about this, you're thinking like to God like that, like, oh, you didn't help me. God, where were you? It's a very powerful emotion because you trusted God. You've done, like, even for me, I've done so much for God. I've been, God is, I thought God was going to be there for me. And, here we go again through another tribulation. And God, this has happened between me and my parents, or this has happened between me and another member, or whatever it is, right? And I was thinking that usually it's going to happen either during a tribulation or it's going to be magnified by the tribulation. And I think that's kind of two things that tribulations do. When you go through a heavy tribulation, during that tribulation, you're going to probably have a really bad experience in that tribulation, right? Like, think about Job. He lost his entire family. Like, that would be something that a lot of people would be like, think God betrayed them. Wouldn't you think? Like, during that tribulation, oh my gosh, God did this. Oh, and then that causes the person to feel a certain way. Or a tribulation can magnify a negative feeling. Like, you've already felt something before in a small way that you felt God could have helped you out with. And then when you go through massive tribulation, that feeling becomes magnified. And you're like, oh, I knew it. God is like this. And then you can start betraying. And I was like, wow, like, I was really thinking about how it gets to the point of betrayal, because the reason I was thinking about this is because that's what the whole message is about. The betrayal of someone being the body of God turning into the body of the world. Because when you think about all the people that left in March, didn't you kind of feel it was all of a sudden like, whoa, how can leaders just leave? Like what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. It was very all of a sudden. They leave. But when you think about it deeply, they're leaving because they already had a bad experience, or they've already had some type of wrong perception. They went through that negative feeling, and that tribulation either caused that feeling of betrayal, or it magnified something that was already there, to the point they felt betrayed, that they can be, if you feel betrayed, imagine, like, you got to think about some of these people, right? Some of these people that we know left, they gave their life for this history, right? Like, even if I think about myself right now, if I thought, I'm going to be like very, very truthful and honest right now. If I really thought, let's pretend I really thought that something seems wrong and stuff like that, I would look at my life and like, I've spent 25 years in this history, and oh my gosh, I've been wrong. And I've been bringing so many people into this history for the... like, you can imagine the feeling of betrayal that they have. Couldn't you? You could feel it, like, because you put so much into it. Because even for me, the one thing that really just made my heart really wonder what was going on is like leaders and people that I knew. I was looking at the situation and there wasn't enough evidence against Sunstein, or there wasn't enough information to make a real informed decision, like a reasonable and rational decision. There wasn't enough information. And that's what blew my, like, whoa, what is going on? And, you know, I thought, I couldn't, I found it really hard to accept their answer, or their reasoning is, well, I'm so close to this person, I know them so well, and they wouldn't lie. And in my heart, that does make sense, actually. It does make sense if it was them and a stranger. Like, you know, they were making the accusation and the person they're accusing is someone I have no idea who is. However, in this situation, it doesn't work because we know both sides. It's Sunstein is being accused and someone else we know is doing the accusing, which means that you know both sides. It's a very tricky situation where you can't just say, boom, I knew it was wrong. Oh, he's a bad person. No, you couldn't, because you have trust and love for both sides. And for me, the thing that was really weird is the fact that you would take one side over the other means you trusted them more than Sunstein, right? Even without enough evidence, just on like what they said. And I looked at that and I was like going, oh, that's really interesting. Because if someone like AJ can just, you know, all of a sudden go off like that, I thought to myself, is anyone really safe? And the answer is no, no one's safe. And this kind of reminds me of one of the things Sunstein talked about in the past. Sunstein in the past said, are you ever free from the fall? And it's no, you should always be on guard. Just because you overcame a situation where you didn't commit the fall doesn't mean that, oh, now that I've overcome, I'm never going to be able to be tempted again. It's like, no, you are constantly, until the end of your life, you're going to get these temptations. You can't help it. That's just the way life is, right? That, you know, if Satan tries to tempt you and you overcome it, then the next time Satan comes with something stronger. And that's why we have to keep raising our level, keep being alert and, and discerning all the situations. And that's why I was like going, yeah, that's so true that even someone so, like some of these people that left, like AJ and like, all these other people that we looked up to were like, whoa, if these people can leave, what does it say about us? And it's not saying it's a scary thing. It's just kind of the same as it was before, is if you lose sight of what you're supposed to be doing, if you kind of go off track even on just a little bit, what's going to happen is you have a chance to be tempted and to fall off course. And I was thinking about this situation really deep. I was like, man, I got to really look at myself and reflect on the things that may eventually catch up with me or make me misunderstand God in the future. You know, it's those times where I really felt not betrayed, but like, God, why did you do it? No, God, oh my gosh. And you know what the funny thing is? If it's not you, if it's someone else who's going through it, what happens is you look at them and you give them the best advice because you're not emotionally involved in it. But when it's you in the situation, it's hard for you to see it the way that you would actually give advice about, right? And, I thought to myself, what is one of the biggest things? I need to reflect back on the past of the different things. But the one thing that I thought was, I had a conversation with someone yesterday, great conversation. And I thought to myself I need to change my reactions to difficult situations, or like psychology calls it like a defense mechanism, right? How do we react to something that is really, really bad? And sometimes we have knee-jerk reactions. And then all of a sudden we start jumping to conclusions. Like I'll give you an example is I had a phone call yesterday. And of course we were talking about the spiritual Oppenheimer. That's what we're going to call that from this point on. It's called the spiritual Oppenheimer. Okay. So we were talking about the spiritual Oppenheimer we went through, and we were asking, and what came up was this letter that was written by Sunstein. And it was a letter of apology to someone who was accusing. Okay. And this person called me and was asking me, like, curious about it. And I was asking questions. And I looked at that and I was like, that is a very mature defense mechanism, a very mature reaction. This person did not assume, did not jump to any conclusions, but was just asking good questions. Questions like, is it a real letter? Did Sunstein actually write it? What is he actually apologizing for? What was the original letter sent? Like, these are real questions when you ask, is you're curious. you're mature about it, and you're trying to get to the bottom of, oh, what does this all mean? But I'll tell you now, I've talked to other people in the past with very bad defense mechanisms and very reactionary. And what they'll say to me is, just by the way they say it to me is like, look at this letter. He's admitting to guilt. Why would he say he's sorry? What does this mean? Because he said sorry, but but this person wrote this letter, so this must mean that he's guilty of something. He's got to be wrong of something, right? And I'll look at that. I'll look at this person, and in my heart, I'll say like, well, there's a lot of things that I would think about, and of course, I'm not fully emotionally into the situation as this person asking me, but as someone in that not mature, but let's just say in a reasonable state, I would sit there and say, if this was any admission of guilt, then the courts would have used that letter and the trial would be over, because they would say, hey, guess what? He wrote a letter admitting his guilt. But that letter is not even being used. It's not even entered as evidence, right? Then I would ask questions like, well, you can't just say, well, he's admitting guilt, right? But then my question would be, what's he admitting guilt to? And then they'll say, well, why would you apologize if you didn't do something wrong? And I'd be like, yeah, it's true. You can do something wrong, but it doesn't mean he did the wrong that you're thinking. Because I've seen Sunstein apologize for many things. For instance, whenever there's like a big problem that happened with leadership, Sunstein would apologize to the church, even when he's not directly involved. Right? It's just because he's the leader. And he'll apologize and say, I am so sorry I didn't train well enough. I'm so sorry because this is the person that's under me and they caused you pain, so I'm apologizing. That's not saying that he's the one that actually did all the hurt. He's saying, oh, I should have trained them better. Right? I've seen Sunstein apologizing to someone because later he'll talk about, oh, I should have managed them more. I should have taken care of them better. I'm so sorry. I should have taken care of you more. Like there's so many different reasons out there besides that one thing that's in your mind. And this is where like I said before, is if we don't reflect back on the different things that we had or the different things we might have misunderstandings with God, those things can be magnified at the time of tribulation. Right? Because tell me the truth, guys. How many people were not confused in March, like, what the heck is going on? And we'd be like sitting there waiting for an answer, like, oh my gosh, right? And all it took was someone who's been through the situation before saying, just wait. Wait for more information. We've been through this before. Be reasonable, be rational. Don't jump to conclusions. Just wait on it. And now we're only like 4 months later, we've already got way more information. We're like, okay, I'm glad I waited. And I look at that and I say, yeah, one of the hardest parts about us, and I would say it's harder for women because women are more emotional than men generally, right? So when the heart and emotions come really strong, we lose rationale and reasoning, right? And that's why women are crazy. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. I made this into a joke. I'm sorry. But like I'm saying, yeah, what happens is when you get into it too emotionally, even with guys, right? Guys too, when we get super angry, we don't listen to reasoning. It's not logical anymore. And I think that's something like having rationale and reason is so important because those are the two very things we need to assess and discern things properly. And if we want to discern things really well, discern the situation, before we can make a proper decision, we need to have that reasoning down pat. And sometimes it just requires us to be patient and wait for more information. Like I've seen situations like as a leader where we just need to wait for an answer, but sometimes we can't wait. And we have to make a decision on that spot. So sometimes we have to make a quick decision and then later we change our direction when more information comes out. You know what I mean? Like I think one of the worst things you can do is absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? So, I think for us, if we don't want to be caught up and become the body of the world, one of the biggest problems we're going to go through is when we become strongly, negatively emotional, like very strongly. And I think we need to look back at those things, reflect back at those things that have caused a lot of misunderstanding or it made us think kind of like, God, why would you do this? And we need to become more mature in all these situations, especially when the tribulation comes. Like that's what this is what this entire mental exercise I was going through over the last 2 days. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. Oh, the message was so powerful. Oh, but why does it happen? How do they become the betrayal? That's such a strong thing. How can people just all of a sudden betray? And of course, it always comes down to two things. And this is the two things we hear all the time. And what are they? Number one is we really, really need to know the word well. Like, for instance, if, remember I told you how strong, like some of us are talking about how strongly the message, how deep the message was, how deep the shimjang was. Being honest with yourself and saying, how come I didn't feel that? You know what I mean? Like, you might think to yourself as, oh, I didn't feel the same way Pastor Sky felt. I didn't feel the same way that these people writing in the comments. Oh, I wonder why that is. It's not a bad thing. I don't think it's about spiritual level. It's more about just spiritual, getting yourself back on track, right? To feel something is almost like, when you, those of you guys who probably don't even know what I'm talking about about radio stations. Before you had these radio stations, you had a knob, you turn left and right, searching for the station that you want to listen to for the radio. Because, we never had like MP3s and stuff back then. But we have a radio. And with the radio, you've turned the knob so that we can find the right frequency to get that channel. And I think that's kind of what it is sometimes we're a little bit off the frequency, and all we need to do is get ourselves back onto that frequency, which is through the word, which you have to focus a lot through the word. And like Sunseem said, I think 3 weeks ago, he's like, the important part is, not only is the word good, but are the people listening really preparing and listening to the word really well too? And I think that is a very, very important thing that we have to look at also, right? The word is God's thoughts. And if you want to have the same thoughts as God, we need to know the word well, keep our thoughts clear. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean that, oh, you know what? The word is kind of hard for me sometimes, but I am a huge advocate of word studies. This is why I do word studies every day, Monday to Friday. There's a word study. What do we have? Mondays is the Sunday message. Today we do the practical word study. Wednesdays we do the Bible word study. Thursdays we do Q&A. And then Fridays we do the Wednesday message word study. And I think that is something that we really gotta get ourselves back into. And I really hope, this is one thing that I hope, is that when I look at the former faith, they just have it down so well that once a week, right? Or once every 2 weeks, they're going to meet at someone's house. They're going to have dinner together. They're going to discuss the word. They're going to go through a Bible study and such. And I think that's powerful. And I think that's something that we really, really need to consider. And I hope it's something that we will be able to get ourselves, our hearts and our minds into thinking also. And I wouldn't mind starting it at a cafe, because I am most comfortable at a cafe. But yeah, the word is the big thing, is keeping the thoughts in and having the right thoughts. The second thing I would say that will keep your heart and emotions in the right place. Once again, it's the cliche. It's prayer. It's all about the word and prayer. And especially right now with the 70-day prayer condition, like, make it a goal to do these 70 days. Like, really make it a goal. Get that pre-dawn going, to get your hearts and minds very clear and clean. And I think one of the big things that we're praying for, when it comes to yourself, like, the repentance is the big one. We can see already in the news, the judgment of Noah, like the judgment of conscience, is already started. It's already started. And Sunseem even said, when it comes to each individual, it's an everyday thing, and we really, really need to get ourselves in tuned and make sure we get our sins forgiven, and make sure we repent and say, God, I did this. God, I'm so sorry for this. It's almost like, God, it's the time of judgment. Please don't judge me. But I do think it's a very, very important thing that we should be thinking about. Right? So, like, those are some of the thoughts I've been having about this week's practical word study. But I am hoping that we can have word studies wherever we go, once a week, once every 2 weeks, so people can just sit down and talk about the word. And I think that's something that is a very big thing that we can think about too. Okay, so there it is, guys. That is the practical word study for today. Hope it's something that made you guys think more deeply, get yourself more involved into the word for this week, which means let's move into the second break of the day. Okay, so let's get into the final segment for today, which is the Provi in the media. And of course, we do have kind of like a 2 to 3 month hiatus because they're going to go through this judicial recusal that was requested on July 16th. And we're not going to know if this judge will be recused or not, but it does give us more time to pray about the situation. The only thing I'm going to go over today when it comes to Provi in the media is very, very interesting thing that I found out is that these peaceful protests in Korea that's happening, like they already had one, and I put the link in the comments for some of you to take a look at. But it's just a protest, very peaceful protest. It is done under law, and there was about 300 protesters that went out and made protests. And for me, it was really interesting because it wasn't planned by Sunsteam or headquarters, which I find very interesting. It's more spontaneous. It was more organic. Like the people wanted to do something for God in a way that was more, what's the right word? Peaceful, meaning it's not something that's going to hurt the situation. And I don't, like, from what I've heard and what I've seen, it's not really hurting the situation. Like, you know, they have a second protest that will be coming up, all volunteers. It's not by, like I said, headquarters, not by Sunsteam. And they're going to have a second protest that's going to happen. And of course, basically, it's all about the misinformation or the bad way that the broadcast company and Netflix, they did things in a false way, a manipulative broadcast, and they're basically crying out for truth, right? But in a very organized and peaceful manner. And I think this is something that is, it kind of reminds me that a lot of people are asking what they can do for this history or what they can do for Sunsteam at this time. And people will come up with some crazy ideas. They will. They'll be like, oh, then we're going to have to storm the prison. Or like, I'm not saying someone said that, but people will come up with crazy ideas, right? Ideas that may actually hurt in the end. But I was telling you guys before is like public protests are a common occurrence in Korea on the streets. Whenever the civilians have a grievance against the country, against the government, they want the government to find out, they're gonna protest peacefully, and this gets out in the news. But I found it very inspiring that it was organic, and I do hope that it will open the eyes of the public, that the public outrage will change, and they'll realize, wait, this is something that's really unfair that is going on with the government and this court case. Because, you might think to me, like some people might say to me like, oh, but Sky, don't you think it's going to be really hard for people to change their opinion? And I'm going to be like, yes, it is. And they're like, especially because there's such a bad reputation of Providence in Korea also. However, there's one thing about Koreans that you do need to know is the Korean public, what they hate to see even more than say like a bad religion is when there is corruption and government overreach. Like when there's something that the government who has more power do against the civilians, they don't actually care about the religion. They are going to be people that protest because it's about something bigger. So let me give you an example. In South Korea, I told you guys this before, but like cult deprogramming, it still continues to this day. It's like the only country in the world, even Japan stopped it. It's the only country in the world that actually still has deprogramming, right? And they kidnap the kids, whatever it is, and try to deprogram them. And interestingly enough, like in 2018, there was a massive street demonstration after a female member, I think she was a high school student, and she was a member of, guess which church? Shincheonji. She was a member of Shincheonji, and she was strangled to death by her father while she was trying to escape deprogrammers. Think about this, guys. This is Shincheonji also has a very bad reputation in Korea, which is a known cult, and people are against them, but even they protested and rallied together because of this. It was more important about this deprogram that was hurting, and then the father strangling their own child. Like this was something that was even more important to them too. So just because they're like they're a church that people are against or they don't agree with, it doesn't mean that they're going to be all of a sudden they're not going to agree with us at all. No, it's just that the information has to get out there, and that's why it's great to see these YouTubers go out. It's great to see the members go out and do these protests. And for us, the greatest thing that we can do right now is this 70-day prayer condition. And let me tell you why this 7-day prayer condition can make miracles happen. Why? Because the 21-day prayer condition caused a huge miracle. I thought the 21-day prayer condition was very successful. We're about to get a verdict in a case. The last case was coming up, and our prayer, the last day of our prayer condition was on the day of the trial. And guess what? The trial gets moved for another 2 months because of a judicial recusal request. Prayer changes things. This is something that is out of our hands. This happened because it was God's will. And we were able to pray so that these things could change. And I want everyone to understand, I truly believe that if we pray and these protests go really well, we pray for the public opinion to change, we pray for the government to see what's going on, we pray for the courts to see what is happening, then this is going to be one of the biggest things we can do is this 70-day prayer condition. And as crazy as it sounds, it's going to be the 70-day prayer condition from everyone all over the world that's going to cause the biggest impact more than the actual protest itself. Right? That's like, the protest is important, but the prayer condition is going to be the bigger thing. It's going to be bigger. Right? We all prayed for 21 days. Boom. We have the last trial. This is the last trial. The one that's going to be like the deciding point, and then we're going to get the verdict. That's being pushed 2 months later, which is nuts, right? Right on the last day of the trial, they had to push it forward. And now they're going to look into the judicial recusal. Now we have more time to make these public protests. Now is a time for kind of waking up people to what is actually happening with the trial that we're going through right now. And it's something that I do think if we really, really pray together on this for these next 70 days, I hope and I pray that we'll be able to make sure another miracle happens by what's 2 to 3 months later. It's going to be July, so it's August, September. So either the end of September or it's about, let's just say October, we'll find out whether the judicial recusal goes through, and then we'll have the final trial, which means that this one trial might go to the end of the year, right? It's possible. And it's something I think that we can all work on together and we can all pray together for. All right, so this is kind of a short one, but we don't have a lot of information because of this 2 to 3 month hiatus we have because of the judicial recusal. And I hope it's something that we can really, really focus on the 70-day prayer condition. All right. So there it is, guys. This is the end of Provi in the Media. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I got some more information and some more insight. I hope you guys have an amazing and awesome Tuesday, which means we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone.